Hey guys, thanks for coming to my talk today. My name is Manabu McCloskey. I am a solutions architect at Amazon Web Services. Today I will be talking to you about Spinnaker's managed service combined with ACK using LED lights. As you can see, behind me is a set of LED lights as well as a glorious picture of a cat. I also have a application that's running in my Kubernetes cluster. If you look at my terminal, I am just port forwarding port 8080 on this service to my localhost. And if I were to go to that localhost 8080, there's this little web app. And if I were to press on this button, it's going to turn off that light behind me. And if I press it again, it's going to turn this off on. It works, right? But it's very simple, and it'd be nice to have more functionalities like adjust the brightness or being able to change the colors of the LED lights, all that, right? We'll be doing that later in this talk. But before we do that, let's talk about the current implementations architecture. So let me. All right. This is what the current implementation looks like. So we have a Git repository that's acting as the source of truth, and that Git, whenever you push anything to Git, Jenkins is going to take the code and push a new image to the Docker registry. And once that image is available, Spinnaker is constantly monitoring this Docker registry for new images to be available. When the new image is available, Spinnaker is going to notice that, and it's going to instruct this Kubernetes cluster to provision all the resources that's needed. And when Kubernetes receives that request, it's going to go out and talk to this Docker Hub registry and pull that requested image, and then starts running the pod with that new image. Once that's done, that pod is going to be able to talk to my LED lights controller in my home, and that's how it is working right now. And this is what the Spinnaker's managed services UI looks like. So it's there's a versions tab on the left. This just corresponds to Docker types available within the repository. So number 9 corresponds to a Docker image tag number 9, and number 8 corresponds to a Docker tag number 8, and so on. And then on the right, you have this test deployment. These are the deployments that I talked about earlier. So deployment, this uses the Kubernetes deployment, and this one's the corresponds to Kubernetes service object. Okay. So I already have the code changes that I wanted to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this change to the repository, and we'll talk about what we changed and all that afterwards. So let me just push this. Okay. So once it's pushed, what is going to happen is that Jenkins is going to start building the Docker image, and then it's going to be available within the repository that we talked about. So while it's doing that, let's talk about the changes I just made. So this is what it used to look like beforehand. So this is the YAML file that's representing that UI that we just looked at. So we have artifacts right here. This one is just referring to just my particular artifact or the Docker repository. And I have a single environment defined. It just calls dev. And then within this environment, I have two resources defined. One is a Kubernetes service, and then another is a Kubernetes deployment, like we talked about earlier. These do not change. Then another thing that I added is this object right here. This is a manifest representing the DynamoDB table using ACK. For those of you who do not know what ACK is a it's a AWS controller for Kubernetes, meaning you can submit this kind of custom resources to Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is going to provision that that AWS resource for you. So in this case, we have a DynamoDB table defined in this manifest, and we are just telling the Kubernetes operator to create this object for us. So with this, what the architecture is going to look like is like this. So you now have this bit at the bottom. So everything else doesn't really change, right? But when you're provisioning these applications, this is where it changes. So we actually now told Kubernetes to provision an Amazon DynamoDB table for us. And once that's provisioned, the new pod or the new image that we push is going to be able to use that DynamoDB table and get more functionality out of it, right? In this case, we're just storing the names of the colors that we're going to support and its corresponding RGB values. Okay, so with that new architecture, let's go back to our Spinnaker's managed services UI. Yeah, on the left, if you look at it, there's a new version of Artifact available. Used to be number 9, right? But now we have a new artifact that's just number 10. This is the code that we just pushed, and so Spinnaker is constantly monitoring the Docker Hub for new images. So when it notices that new image is available, it's just going to pull that and then catch that as a version to be deployed. And this new version is deployed to the Kubernetes cluster, like we talked about. So it's now pushed to the dev environment here. And this test deployment is now using that new version of the Docker image. And now like we saw earlier, we now have 3 Kubernetes resources that's being managed. We used to have deployment, service, we still have those. And then finally, we have the table. This table object represents the DynamoDB table that the application is using right now. Okay, so if we were to do a port forward again to the service, just wait for it to be done. Okay, then if you were to go back to the localhost 8080, you can see that we now have new elements to the UI, right? We used to have just a toggle button, but now we have brightness as well as color that we can control. So let me just make sure my screen doesn't go in the background. There you go. Maybe I gotta make it a little bit bigger. Okay. And if I were to press this toggle button, it's just still going to turn itself off, right? But it's as expected. It works. Now, if you want to change the brightness, there you go. It's very bright in here. My eyes are hurting, but see how far it can go. Okay, it's a little too much, but hey, it works, right? And I'm just gonna lower it a little bit because it's getting a little too much. All right, and then we can now change colors. So say we want to be red. Submit. And it's going to change its color to red. Hey, pretty neat, right? How about some blue? Change it to blue. Ooh, it's blue. And finally, we can just do like light green or something. It should work as well. Okay, there you go. See? So yeah, this is just the showcase of what you can do with the Spinnaker's managed service, as well as ACK, or the AWS controller for Kubernetes. Like we talked about earlier, this is mostly just done through this DynamoDB table. So this DynamoDB table contains the colors of the RGB values of colors that we want to change to. Anyways, I think you guys again for joining my talk today. Yeah, and just if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.